Hey, we have Studio Espinoza here. I want to get your title correct. President of Sports and then for Showtime.
It is. It used to be much longer. Now it's simple. We simplified it.
So can you talk just quickly up front? I mean, boxing, obviously, sports documentaries as well. What is the wide range?
From inside the NFL, which is our studio show, a season with, which is a show where we embed with one college football team all season, sports documentaries, developing other shows. So I think boxing gets the most attention. It's something that Showtime has a long history in, but we try to give as broad an offering while still being unique across all sports.
So something I really want to ask you, actually. Mm-hmm. So Saturday night, first round.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have a commitment to Errol Spence, big dramatic win. Mm-hmm. Is there an element that, that was too fast? When the camera goes down,
it's a little bit of a mixed bag. But generally, sure, there is some grumbling, but what I found out is most fans don't mind. Right. So it is something memorable. It is something that only happens in combat sports. There's not another event that you go to, another sporting event that you go to, where it could just end in the drop of a hat out of the blue. So it is something memorable. It makes a definite statement. I mean, what Errol said, I think, probably encapsulates it best. What he said after the fight, he said, "Look, I would have liked to given the fans 3 or 4 rounds of entertainment and then a big finish, but that's the nature of the sport."
Yeah, I was exciting today.
Yeah.
So a lot of positive feedback from the broadcast on Saturday. Mm-hmm. This is interesting. So great mandatory counting on a lot of people in Europe.
Right.
But there's a natural storyline built into hometown. I mean, it seems natural in hindsight, but very successful broadcast story that narrative. Just explain, talk us through sort of that whole thing. I mean, getting involved with Dallas Cowboys, was that from the boxing side? Was that from the side? I mean, they really had.
They did. The narrative only works. That kind of homecoming narrative only works, when it's authentic. And I think the only recent time we did in the past is we did something a little bit similar with Danny Garcia when he went to Puerto Rico. Now he's from Philly, but he's Puerto Rican. His father's from Puerto Rico. So in some sense, there was a natural storyline in here. Now with Errol, it's even more natural. Raised there since he was very young, a huge Cowboys fan. And you had a brand new venue that's, perfect size. And there were other venues that were in play, but none that really had the cachet of this brand new venue. So I think it's one of the few times where the venue plays an important role in this story, because you have, it's sort of like, I'm a Cowboys fan as well. I wanted to see the new venue, and even locally, it's still a bit of a novelty. So the fact is, the promotion made the ultimate decision to go to the Cowboys facility rather than, say, American Airlines, and it had a lot to do. Sure, yeah. You want to wait till the noise? Oh no, okay. So yeah. So the promotion made the ultimate decision to go with, the Cowboys facility rather than American Airlines, and it was largely in part because of the built-in storyline and the marketing and promotional support that the Cowboys were offering.
Were you surprised they were that generous? I mean, getting Dak on the broadcast, getting Jerry Jones in the ring, which gave it the feel of like a championship fight.
Right, that's right.
Celebration.
It's funny there. Errol's got a unique relationship, in Dallas. And since he's come up there, and Derek has been a sort of fixture in the community as well, he's got a big following, surprisingly, of other athletes. He went to high school with Von Miller from the Broncos. Michael Crabtree was a couple years. He's got a lot of sort of colleagues, compatriots of the same general age range. And he's always worn the Dallas thing on his sleeve. So when he fights, he gets wished good luck by the Dallas Mavericks social account. It's sort of, so it's been a long build. But for someone like Dak or Michael Irvin or DeMarcus Lawrence, it was, I think, the novelty. They haven't seen a big time fight in Dallas in a while, and to be someone who they're at least familiar with and in some sense, social with, I think it just, again, organically drew them to the event.
Okay, I want to respect your.
No, it's fine. Go ahead. Okay.
So just wondering if you talk about Errol's, long-term future with Showtime. So he's getting to be viewed as one of the face of Showtime boxing.
Yeah, it's been sort of an interesting year, a very meaningful year for Errol over the last, roughly, 12 months. He was always seen as somebody with promise, as a guy to watch, someone to keep your eye on, a future prospect. And over the last year, we've seen him go from a prospect, a future possibility, to, one of the current faces of the sport. So if you look at where things are, there are a handful of candidates as we transition from Mayweather-Pacquiao era to whatever era is after this. And I think what you see in Errol is sort of something we haven't seen in boxing before. He is certainly not the Mayweather presentation. He's sort of, in many senses, the antithesis of what Mayweather was. He's very humble. He is very modest, soft-spoken, and yet he's got his own appeal and his own magnetism in a quiet sort of way. So I think it's a combination of someone who is, an elite performer skill-wise and power-wise in the ring, and then a really humble, likable, quietly charismatic personality outside the ring.
So he fought his debut on Showtime.
Correct.
So really, you guys have been with him for a long time.
For a long time, yeah. And again, that was really a flyer at that point. It's sort of like, the Olympians are always a good storyline, but you never know where they're going to go. So this is one of the ones where we correctly identified him as a guy to watch, on his pro debut, and have sort of stuck with him throughout.
So there was a lot of talk, he was on the PBC for a few years, and then, he fought Kell Brook. There was a lot of talk about what his future was going to be. He was being courted, we don't know how seriously, but Oscar De La Hoya was planning on trying to go to fight Cotto. I mean, was there a period where you guys made a significant outreach and said, we want to get him over here, or was it more natural behind the scenes than maybe it played out for us?
It's something that we always had the desire, but we were brought into the PBC plan pretty early, and it was what I'll call short-term pain for long-term gain. We understood that part of the experiment of the PBC was to take these guys to over-the-air networks and see whether they could get traction there or what they would do when they came back to us. So Wilder, went to network for a couple times. Danny Garcia fought on NBC, for example. Errol, had a great opportunity coming out of the USA basketball gold medal game. So, it was. I'd be lying if we didn't look at each of one of those and have a sort of a sense of, wish we were having those. But it was one where we thought, this is worth the sacrifice. Let's see if we can kickstart them to a different level. And if we fast forward to where they are today, those guys, whether it's Keith Thurman or Danny Garcia or Errol Spence or Deontay Wilder, have become, the leaders of the sport, the young rising stars. And I think in no small part because they've been on a variety of different outlets. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I've got yeah, so Errol's already talked about, that fight went pretty fast. He had a big dramatic knockout, but it looks like, he wasn't even in a fight. He's ready to get back in the gym. So they're already talked about a fall return?
He's been very clear, since the start of the end of 2017 that he wanted to fight 3 times in 2018. And certainly when one of those fights is a one-round fight, that's very realistic. On top of that, he's got some natural opponents, but he's a little off calendar with them. In other words, the big unification fight with the winner of Garcia and Porter is the natural next fight, but they're not fighting likely until August or September and wouldn't be ready until early 2019. So he needs another fight and likely will be back on Showtime before the end of the year.
So shift gears a little bit. Talk about a few other Showtime fighters. So Keith Thurman, coming out of the Kell Brook fight, that was the super fight people were talking about. Errol Spence versus Keith Thurman.
Right.
Keith Thurman was coming off the win against Danny Garcia on CBS.
Right.
Huge ratings. He's had some injuries. He's had some trouble.
Right.
Can you give any update on his return?
Sure.
What the plans are for Keith Thurman?
Sure. I spoke to him. Within the last 10 days. He was in the Far East with his new wife, and I think he's gotten some criticism, which I think is unfair. He had a very serious elbow injury, very serious surgery. He also had one of his fights last year postponed, or his fight last year postponed, because of a car accident. So he's had bad luck, and then he got married, and I think fans. We're a little
making too much of some kind of these life things.
Well, I think they're a little disappointed because he had established a lot of momentum, and then there was, look, you can't really begrudge someone getting married and wanting to spend some time. I guess boxing fans can, but it's a combination of things that have sort of compounded. But I don't question his commitment to the sport. I think he will need one fight to really come back, and hopefully it's only one fight, and test everything out. But I think you will see very quickly him back to the mix at the highest level. Right. So I think he'll come back again, probably August, September.
Okay.
At something a notch below top tier, and then be ready for top tier competition.
Okay, so some type of return. Do you think it definitely will main event, possibly?
Co-feature, it's one of those that, we've set such a standard for the types of fights we're doing on Showtime. It's possible it could go somewhere else, depending on the opponent. It's, we've had just monster fight after monster fight, right. So it's sort of tough to let one guy take, even though he's got good cause. Yeah. Okay. So it could be.
PDC shows on a network.
It could be, because as much as we love to have him, our budget is not unlimited.
Okay.
So it's possible.
Very interesting. Okay, so two more fighters want to ask about.
Okay.
So, David Benavidez.
I get two. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
No, I'll do two
fast.
fighters.
Yeah,
there we go.
You've been
Okay.
Very
no problem.
Greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Very quick. David Benavidez. There was some legal stuff. I heard you right before the lawsuit got settled. I think it was Michael Woods' podcast. Great interview with Michael Woods. Said that you felt confident it was going to get resolved. He was going to be back on Showtime's air very shortly after that this happened. So wondering if you can talk anything about that, and if he's confirmed he was, I believe, reported to be on the Mikey Garcia undercard. If there's any news announced about his return.
He was on that card, and then this sort of complication came up.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fully resolved yet, but I think it's hopefully on its way. I don't think he's actively training because he is sort of still in limbo. So I think the Mikey Garcia undercard is a bit of a stretch.
Okay.
But he's another guy that we had started to build a lot of momentum with.
Yeah.
And he's getting title fights. He's getting high profile slots, and I think he wants to continue that. So as soon as we have any opportunity, any window in there to get him back in, we're all in with him.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a great fit. The Mikey Garcia undercard would have been perfect.
Yeah.
I think, to fight in LA.
Yeah, it would.
Undercard had a good opponent lined up.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? I think we're good here.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.